Something is happening to American education right now.
And it cannot wait.
Across this country, students and their communities are being erased from curriculum, from culture, from policy.
Everything families fought for, everything educators built, under threat.
The federal rollback of civil rights protections in education is not abstract. Students are feeling it today, and these decisions will shape the next generation. The fight for educational justice is not over.
We must come together to build an education that doesn't just include every student,
but honors them,
celebrates them,
their histories, their rights,
our histories, our rights.
And despite everything being challenged right now, we know it's possible when we move together. So let's talk about possibility. I'm Ezekiel Dixon-Roman, director of the M.W. Gordon Institute for Advanced Study at Teachers College, Columbia University.
And I'm Sonia Douglas, founding director of the Black Education Research Center, also at Teachers College. Together, we're bringing you 4 conversations that cannot be missed: the politics of possibility.
Each episode, Sonia and I sit down with leading voices from policy, research, and practice.
Researchers like former U.S. NCES Commissioner Peggy Carr.
School leaders like Superintendent Wilmer Chavarria.
Policymakers like former U.S. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona.
And advocates like Angela Glover Blackwell of Policy Link.
Real strategies, real voices.
A clear-eyed path forward.
Education is not lost.
But this moment demands us.
Watch The Politics of Possibility.
Season 1 is available now.
You're listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendent and Leadership Podcast, a proud member of the Podcasterall Network. Hello, Jamie.
Hi, Peter. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Jamie, I got up early this morning. We had a holiday here, so I didn't have to go into work. And so I took a paddle lesson. Paddle. It's like a sport like tennis, also like pickleball, and also like racquetball. And it is a pretty popular sport down here in South America. And I have learned that it is growing everywhere, actually. Watch out, pickleball. But I came back from my class and I came back to my apartment and my phone rang. And I thought maybe it was actually I ordered a paddle racket because I keep renting one here. Club. And so my phone rings. And so I answer the phone and it's the portero, the doorman. Most of the buildings here have doormen. And I'm like, hi, how are you? And it was my birthday yesterday. I was like, oh, happy birthday. And he's like, so I'm calling to see if you'd like to collaborate. And I was like, I didn't understand that, colaborar. And I was like, or una colaboración. And I was like, I'm not sure. Can you tell me what that means? And he's like, yeah, no, if you want to give me money for my birthday. And I was like, is that okay? I'd be happy to wish you a happy birthday. I'll come down before 5. And so I started to text, newbie question here. Is this like typical? Not one person has said that is what you're supposed to do here. I've talked to Colombians. They're like, oh no, this guy has pegged you as a nice guy. What have you been doing that's nice? I was like, when I go out to the market, I bring back a Coke for the night shift. Oh, do you want anything? Oh, Coke. Oh, great. So bring back a Coke. Now the guy's, it's my birthday. Can you give me money? So every day I'm like, gosh, I'm learning something new, something different. Man.
Hey, love.
How can I be the kind of human I am while also recognizing that there are some norms? I don't think this person has any evil thoughts. Just like, shoot, gives me Coke. I'll tell him it's my birthday. I'm sure it was his birthday, but I'm going to call him and see if he'll give me some money.
2 things come to mind. I think this is a brilliant story because this is 2 things come to mind. It's a brilliant story. It's a story about you being a full noob in
noob
country. But the ganas of this guy.
Exactly. The Yiddish would be chutzpah, like the nerve. He's like, yeah, I'm going to call that guy.
And you know what? I would call and say, my birthday. Folks are contributing. I don't know if you are, but it feels like something you could do.
I plan to go downstairs and be like, quiero saber si has hecho una encuesta. Did you survey the building? Is everybody contributing? Or did you just call me?
Are you going to ask him that?
Ask him that? I'm going to ask him that. But I also know, just like at schools, don't mess with the custodian and the secretaries. Things can start not going well for me in my building if I upset the porteros. They'll make sure everything happens. So I'm going to just ask, and then I'm going to just say, happy birthday. I'm going to give him a little bit of cash, and then say, the next time I'm giving you cash is Christmas. So at least it's done. Tell everyone. That's it.
We'll see how it goes. I can't wait I can't wait to find out in a month. Like, this
That's
is
right. I now,
early Christmas.
my locks are broken. That's right. Here in Colombia, we celebrate Christmas in September.
September 12th is Christmas here.
God. And wouldn't you know, it's my birthday again. Oh my God. So here's the thing. I want to build authentic relationships with people here. And I don't want to be taken advantage of. And so I'm thinking of this week, we're revisiting a great conversation we had with Casey Hallgarth. And he talked about authenticity in relationships. I'm like, man, I don't know what to do here.
It makes me think of that. You remember AASA? Remember when?
Oh God, talk about authenticity.
And so,
I'm sure, like,
New Orleans,
God, you tell me.
and
Like, I'm still
Casey
apologizing to
came up to
him
you,
from
right?
time to time. Like, I texted him like, "I'm so sorry."
Casey came up to you, right?
Yes, he did. He came up to me. Yeah.
And did he thank you, or did he?
Oh no,
Like,
he was
what's
like,
the story? Like,
yeah, he's like,
thank
oh,
you.
that imperfect leader. And I was like, oh, you should totally be on the show. Would you like to? I just realized in that moment I didn't recognize him, that he had been on our program, that we
He's already
loved
been on the.
and we loved him. And he didn't even tell me. He just, okay, take care. Walked off as a true gentleman. And no doubt was like, well, that guy's an idiot. Like, yeah. So, yeah. So here's a guy who talks about genuine
authentic,
relationships,
human-centered
and doing what you say,
relationships.
saying what you do. And it was
What I love about that I've seen you in those settings. I was there. Yeah. You are connected to so many people. And like, even I get to talk to you every week. And I was like, hey, Peter. And you're like, yeah, but I've also got these 10 other people that I want to go say hi to. So I'm running off. Oh, okay. And so I'm sure there's a part of me I can understand.
Oh my God, you were the one, because he told you. You saw
Yeah,
me.
he told me.
He told you. And
He told me in Oregon. I was in Oregon. I
Yes.
saw him at the
he's like, let me tell you this.
Yeah,
I know, because then I
Superintendent.
called him. I was like, Casey.
Superintendent's
Oh my
conference
God.
or something. And I was like, oh my God, that's hilarious.
I think people are going to really enjoy this conversation. They're going to enjoy it because he really has a very clear moral focus about not only will it help the district, but will it help kids? And I love that he had this very collaborative system design that is very much aligned to a human-centered model, prioritizing systems, thinking about student growth. It just, all of it is so great. So Casey, again, I apologize. Very good.
Can I ask you one question before we launch in? Just a new question about, and it's partially because of what I'm bumping up against as I do my work is just the different systems, the way in which a small, tiny system like Casey's leading versus some of the other districts that I'm working with that are big systems. And he does this collaboration effort that is truly across district, but across district in Casey's district is a lot smaller. And so what I'm interested to know is, how have you seen a successful cross-district collaboration about, when it's a bigger district, about something that is harder to talk about? I don't know. They probably are all hard to talk about, so I feel funny naming a particular topic. But right now, the topic that's coming up for us a lot is this conversation about improving instruction or using an instructional framework, and people across content areas in one school having a conversation about instruction that isn't just rooted in just science teachers talking to science teachers kind of thing. So if you think that, but expand it out to a whole system, have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, I would say, and to some extent I was successful in other ways. If I had stayed a little bit longer, I really feel like we would have gotten there. And that is the leveraging peer coaching to really drive change. Having instructional coaches, having a coordinator, if you're using science as an example, those are really powerful sort of tools for doing whole group and large scale sort of training. But if people really understand how to coach each other, non-evaluative, and to lift each other, and you can do that within a school, within a grade level, within a grade band, and allowing people to actually engage in that sort of peer coaching. I know it sounds kind of silly, but it truly does begin to shift the way that, whether it's instructional practice or a better understanding about identifying which power standards you're going to emphasize or anything like that. So I would say it's that. Sometimes you look at a whole large district and you think, how am I going to shift all of this? And so then you really have to break it, just like with any big issue, into smaller chunks. So how do I do this in a really thoughtful way of K2, 3, 5, or you're just starting K1? And then so how does that sort of grow over time? A good example, you open up quite a box here, but I would say a good example is standards reference grading. Many districts just absolutely fall on their face. And
Yeah.
the big part of that is because they move so quickly, and those who've been most successful have really taken the time, almost like one grade level a year. And then you say, my God, that's going to take 13 years. Actually, yeah, because think about how long your system's been here. Scott Menzel in Scottsdale, Arizona, 130 years they're celebrating in their school district. So, things take time to make change. And that's a radical change in thinking about how you give kids feedback and then how parents understand grades, and that grades really should be a reflection of what kids learn. So anyway, there's my long answer to your question.
No, that's a good answer. I love the end of that answer. And I think what I love about Casey's model is that his brain is thinking about it. And I'd be interested to hear now in his answer to that very same question, if he sees something different in small district to large district. And
yeah, I think small districts are more nimble, and small districts possibly hold on to people a lot longer. So they're not constantly taking a step back to reteach or re-explain the why. Lots of times boards are pretty consistent and constant as well. And so that's also really helpful, that you're not having to re-explain, or that people are running against something that they just didn't understand or don't support.
Right.
All right, let's get into our conversation with Casey. Before we do that, let's also remind people that our sponsor is IXL. And everyone is talking about the power of data-driven instruction. And what does that actually look like in one's classrooms? I would say look to IXL for that. It is a K-12 online learning and teaching platform. And there's a reason why 96 of the top 100 school districts in the United States are doing it. And so if you'd like to learn more, if student progress matters to you, discover what IXL can do for your district. Go to IXL.com/imperfect today. All right. You're listening to An Imperfect Leader, Superintendent's and Leadership Podcast. I'm Peter Stiepelman.
And I'm Jamie Mansan. Enjoy this re-listen. I'm excited to hear Casey again.
Welcome, everyone, to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendent and Leadership Podcast.
Hi, I'm eating some peanut butter on a roll muffin, roll English muffin.
That's going to be good for the recording.
Oh, great. We don't have to whistle, do we? Oh, shoot. Just spit them out. Luckily, it's not a video.
I have a question. I'm in the garage.
I'm like, what are you, in a fallout shelter? Organized. It is well organized.
If you know something about me, you'll know that's a thing for me. I put a lot of effort in. It helps me feel calm if my house is organized and neat.
All you preppers out there, I'm looking at some well-prepared stuff.
Yeah, none of which would be all that helpful at the end.
When a major earthquake, quick, these big rolling suitcases.
Yeah, quick, grab the plastic pumpkins we put out for Halloween.
What about the children? What? No.
Casey Hallgarth, our guest.
I actually have a question for you based on some stuff that he said. He repeats the word or the phrase, being genuine with people multiple times. And in the annual segment of This Is What Jamie Wishes Peter had asked, or annual, regular segment.
I was going to say, if you were promising just to do it once a year, I'd be good.
Yeah, exactly. But this is what you get when you hire the two Muppet guys in the
Oh my
in
God!
up in the
Why
balcony.
do we
That's who I
always
am.
come here? I guess we'll never know. It's like some kind of torture to have to watch the show.
Ba-da. I'm that guy. I'm those guys. Because you've done the work, right? You've done this legwork. You've done the interview. You did the research on Casey. I get to sit in the balcony and say, how come you didn't do blah, 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 or you should have done all of that. So let's acknowledge the absurdity of the position. I want to know what he meant by being genuine. What does that look like? Like, when do you know when someone's genuine and someone's not? And I wondered how you would answer that question, especially being a former superintendent.
That's interesting because he said, I wrote down a quote, so it's you and I are on the same page. He says, it all starts with relationships. You got to be authentic. You got to be genuine so that they know where you're coming from. So it's that last part of they know where you're coming from. To me, seems to suggest that you're honest with people, that you would say that you don't know something, right? As opposed to trying to, so many superintendents feel like they're supposed to know everything. And I get the sense that Casey really is a genuine individual and that he says, look, I wasn't an educator to start with. I came from a different field, the technical field of HVAC, right? I've got a lot to learn and I recognize it. So I'm going to be genuine that my experiences run deep in the area of facilities and narrow when it comes to curriculum. And so I think he is honest. I think that would be maybe a synonym for genuine.
I think you just gave an analysis of what you think he is or how he thinks about it.
Yes.
My question was, how do you know you're genuine? Like, when are you genuine?
Yes. So I answered as a superintendent, which is to answer the way I wanted to answer your question. So I give you the definition that I thought he would say, and I think it's because I'm applying my own understanding of the word, which is to be honest, to be vulnerable, I'm sometimes too trusting. People I worked with would say that I trusted too much of what people were saying. And I would say, if this person said this to me, I believe them. And they're like, yeah, that's just not how everybody operates. And I wanted to approach the world a little bit differently, is that I want to believe people, that they're being truthful. And so to me, genuine is a reflection of honesty, truthfulness, vulnerability, and just sort of removing a lot of the sort of veneer that we put up, the masks that we wear. And I know that I wear a mask. I do that as well when you're meeting people and you're trying to put your best face forward, particularly when you're a superintendent. You enter a room and you're sort of surveying what is the values of this room? What's the organization that asked me to speak? Okay, how do I lean towards that a little bit? And you and I have talked about this before, where sometimes then all of a sudden you're doing this so long that you question whether or not you're still being as genuine as you wish you were.
Yeah, I've heard that reflection before. Are those people that said you trust too much recommending more skepticism?
They would say, this doesn't pass the laugh test or the smell test, or this person is really in it for themselves. They say that they're for kids, but they want a contract for themselves. Those types of things where I'd be like, wow, this person approached me and really wants to do this, start a preschool for kids in the part of town that is a desert for early childhood. And really the only availability seems to be a neighbor's home. And it's not always the safest place because the person who's watching kids also works the night shift, and so she falls asleep during the day. So here's a group that is going to rent out a space, and they've gotten some funding, and we should get behind that and support them. I would say, I think this person's being genuine in what they want to do, and maybe we just need to help them figure that out.
I'd rather be overly trusting and be wrong than to be skeptical about everybody. Right. To be skeptical about everybody, God, that's going to wear on you, because eventually you're going to believe that no one actually is truthful.
To me, it seems what it will do is isolate you.
Yeah.
So you believe that, then you become the get off my lawn person with a Ring camera and just leave it on the doorstep. I'm not talking to anybody. I'm so distrusting. Yeah, I agree with you.
I did think that what I heard from him and the way I think he might answer that question, and I don't know how he would because I didn't ask him, but he talked about meeting people and spending time with people in the community. My favorite was when he said that I got to the new district in Baker, and he said I would have coffee with people. I called it Coffee with the Superintendent. I was like, that's an innovative name.
I thought the same thing. Did you workshop that?
Anyway, that was one of my favorite things. But the idea was generally spend more time with people, which had me thinking about the conversation you and I have had about big district, small district, et cetera. Because he was in Prairie, and this is Jamie coming from someone who works in Oregon a lot. And he's moved to Baker. He basically moved northeast from where he was. Baker is actually, if you are trying to get to Baker, depending on where you're living, but for me, from where I live, I'd fly to Idaho.
To where it was, yeah.
I'd fly to Idaho and drive west to get there. It would be faster. What I think is interesting is that he has the ability at Prairie specifically, right? He's a one school district. He's the principal and superintendent, to spend a lot of time with people. When you are in a small community, it's easier. They're by numbers, by pure numbers. And there's a bigger benefit more quickly because once you spend time with people on a regular basis, you're going to see folks out to dinner. You're going to see folks at the grocery store. You're going to see folks walking their dog, all those things. And the relationship or genuine trust will be built more quickly. And so my question to you is, how do you do that in a large district? Because you can't actually meet everyone and spend time with everyone in long periods of time. So then you have to choose. And who do you choose?
So That's an interesting question. I would say that a big part of building relationship in a larger community has to do with giving yourself opportunities to provide, whether it's interviews or world cafes, opportunities for people to see you. So you go to basketball games and you go to football games and you go to the plays and the recitals and the concerts and you walk through gallery night for the art classes so that people see you. Seeing you builds trust. They don't necessarily need to hear everything you're saying. And then you have talking points on things that the community values. And so then the way that you still maintain some connection to people is you have to be really intentional about creating. So I had a community advisory where this was specifically for groups that didn't have a large presence in the community. And we would meet at Centro Latino. They had a kitchen. And so they would make lunch and we would come together and I would talk for just about 10 minutes on things that were coming up. I'd ask for feedback on one big issue that we were dealing with. And then each group would talk about the things that were important to them at that moment. And it was a way to, in that sense, genuinely meet people where they are and to learn what their needs were. So it's a combination. In a big district, you're doing a lot more of the interviews, public conversations, talks, videos. You're pushing it out. And that builds trust because you're visible.
You said something in the interview, also relatively early in the interview. You said you personally asked each school board member to introduce you to 3 people that they admire or they think are influential or important to them in the community. I thought that was amazing.
Isn't that great? I learned that from the Missouri School Board Association. That was advice that was given to me, and I had run with that, and I tell anyone, oh, you're a new superintendent? You need to ask each board member for 2 or 3 people that they think are and it was amazing.
Should we go to the interview and then talk about what we learned afterwards?
Yes, let's do it. You're listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast. Today on An Imperfect Leader, my guest is Casey Hallgarth, the Superintendent of Baker School District in Baker City, Oregon. Casey, welcome to An Imperfect Leader.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate being here.
I'm so pleased to meet you. Casey, I read an interview with you where you said, the goal is to get everyone on this page and to promote our school district like no other. Working with community partners, community members, staff, students, board members, that it's critical to getting this to the next level. So that's often, in my book, referred to as this shared image of success, right? So that everybody understands getting on this page. What are some ways that school leaders can promote a shared image of success?
My version of this is it all starts with relationships. That's kind of a cliche because everybody's like, oh, I can go out and talk to people and they're going to totally understand and buy into what I'm saying. The relationship part is key. You got to be authentic. You got to be genuine so they know where you're coming from. I start with when I first got to my school here at Baker this past July. First thing I did was I'm trying to meet the leadership team, still learning right now the staff as far as teachers and classified staff, and trying to learn the partnerships and the community members. But you have to come across genuine. I've always gone off of my learning, do what you say and say what you do. And that'll solve a lot of problems when you're trying to say, hey, this is what I'm about. This is the way we want to go for our school district. It's a lot of talk and not a lot of action. Once you get that action in place and they see that you're doing what you say, that's where the buy-in starts. As a leadership team, what we've done when I first got here, ask them, what do they need? What's going well? What's not going well? We had a group meeting and I said, hey, I have this great company called Studer. We partnered with them and it's basically a leadership meeting, but we had some of our admin team in their buildings kind of just doing their own thing, not in a bad way, but we weren't on the same level. Now this is going to help us organize and I'm learning with them, me being there with them, learning with them. We don't have a strategic plan. We're going to get that in place for a vision, beliefs, values, all that. And then we're going to work together. And like you said, human-centered school transformation model, that's exactly what this is, right? We go off of what our beliefs are, why we're doing this, what we're doing, and then get everybody involved to share that vision.
I love it. I don't know if Deanna Ashby is with Studer. She's in Kentucky. I think the world of the work that they do. So you're in good company with those folks. What you have just indicated in terms of relationship is paramount. And there are ways that people do that. And I think you're hinting to it a bit in terms of bringing people together, convening them, and really listening to what they're saying. For those who are listening, you're new to this role. You were a superintendent in another district. And is that right?
Yeah, I was a superintendent at a small school, and now I've moved up to a little bit larger school, about 1,500 more students.
So it's really important to get a beat on the system and discern. Everyone has an opinion. Those who want to tell you their opinion have a very specific idea of where they'd like things to go. One of the pieces of advice that I got as a new superintendent, which is wonderful advice from the School Board Association, actually, which was to ask each school board member for 2 or 3 people in the community that they thought were thought leaders in the community that I should go talk to. If I asked them to introduce me to these 2 or 3 people, I would do 2 things. One, I would be able to learn about my board member and their values, because these are the people they introduced me to. So I know that they hold these people in high esteem. And secondly, for me to be able to communicate a vision for the district, I knew that these people would go back to this board member and say, you guys did such a great job hiring. What a great hire. This person is the future of our community. So I felt like that was a really interesting way and productive way to build community and to build relationship. You talked about meeting with your partnerships. I spoke with a superintendent who said there was always a seat at the Chamber of Commerce for the superintendent, yet the predecessor never went. The chamber would leave a seat open with the name tag to demonstrate, look, our schools, which were the largest employer in the community, they're never here. When the superintendent went, it started to turn the tide of the relationship. Chambers are often made up of small business owners. That usually makes up about more than 80% of a community's chamber. And so they began to rally around the school district because they were going to get taxed individually as homeowners and as business owners in the community too. So if they're going to be asked for a tax increase, they better believe in the school district. I'm interested in knowing a little bit more about what might be some ways that you're also doing that, sort of building relationships. Sounds like a lot of listening.
Yeah, a lot of listening and genuine when you are listening. And that's one thing I don't think anybody can get a perfection on. You can always learn to be a better listener.
We'll get to that question about an imperfect leader in a moment.
Some of the ways that I haven't done it here since I'm new, but some of my ideas at my other, like I had coffee with the community members. It's called Coffee with the Superintendent. I pick a date every Wednesday. Some days we get 5 people, some days 10. So it depended on the day. And other little things, like you can do short interviews with and promote those little short videos of projects that are going on in the district, little projects of what's happening, what has happened, and what you completed in a positive light. I try to schedule 2 days a week where I go out into not only the schools, but also try to meet with some partners. And like you said, I haven't asked every board member, but I've asked a few board members, who's a player here that you would really like me to meet? A lot of admin and staff is, hey, you need to meet this person. They're with the Rotary, they're with the chamber. I think just putting yourself out there, being genuine, answering the questions. What I always like to do is set up maybe we can get together and have lunch, have a sit down, actually get to know them and who they are. I think that's very important too.
Love it. If you're just joining us, our guest today is Casey Hallgarth, the superintendent of the Baker School District in Baker City, Oregon. You mentioned the human-centered leadership model. There's something I read about you and it made me think of that model. You said, I always ask myself 2 questions. What is being asked help the district? Will it help the kids in our district? These 2 questions fuel your moral focus, your beliefs, your principles, and your values. I read about this from your previous district, and then you said it again in your new district. So I know this is at your core how you lead and what you value. Can you give an example of how you've relied on these 2 questions, either to start an initiative or to potentially stop an initiative?
Sure. So first off, those 2 questions are the center of my core values. Like you said, we're in this business for the kids. I preach that day in and day out at all of my leadership meetings, when I go to staff meetings at the building level, because sometimes we lose focus of that. There's a lot of noise out there that we get caught up in. It might be political, it might be social media, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, kids are why we're here, to make them better, period, no questions asked. So 95% of the time when staff or my leadership team asks me For example, I need $500 more in my classroom budget to buy a set of books. And is that going to help the district? Is that going to help the kids? Absolutely. Yes. And then on the other side of that, you can get into bigger scale questions. Are we going to go out for a bond? There's a lot of other things, but the initial question is, will the bond help our district and help our kids? Are the taxpayers going to agree with that? Our message has to be clear and cut. It's for the kids. And that's my opinion. But I also have on the other side where a staff member says, hey, I need to go to a professional development in Hawaii, and it's for 2 weeks long, and this is what I'm going to learn. I'm going to have some really hard questions for them, right? Not so much for Hawaii, but for a couple other things that really didn't partake on. It was a little sketchy. So the answer to that's no. And
like, oh, Mardi Gras in New Orleans. Oh.
Exactly.
Yeah. Vegas. No. I remember getting a Vegas question, and I said, Vegas? And the individual said, listen, it's Vegas in July. You think I want to be there in July? Yeah. It's the only place for my certification. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I went to Vegas in July to a summit there, and actually it was pretty good professional development, and it was miserably hot, so everybody stayed inside. I know exactly what you're talking about there. The bottom line is, once the questions are answered yes, then we check into, hey, can we afford this? Is it in our budget? Then think about the takeaways. Once you buy these books for these kids in that classroom, I'm going to pop in and maybe I can be a part of this chapter or whatever and be a part of it.
Speaking about building relationship, but your students get to know you, your teacher gets to see you as the lead learner, as the lead teacher in the district, and not just the CEO. So that's great.
I'll give you examples. Like I said, I schedule 2 days to be in the buildings. In the afternoons, I try and go out and talk to some partners. When I'm in the buildings, the school district right now, I don't know if they're not used to it or what, but so the union rep here, which I have a great relationship with the teacher union rep, she says, hey, I just want to share this dialogue I had with the teacher. And so it goes down and says, hey, why is the superintendent in our building so much? Did we do something wrong? And I'm just like, and then he just wants to get to know people and he wants to be a part of what's going on. And also I've explained to everybody, I want to get my cup full. I used to be a teacher. I still love it. I miss it. And it's my way to get the cup full. But once we get past, like, that's just a little hurdle that once I'm not there.
Well, you're shifting the cultural field, and that sometimes is disruptive. And yet you're shifting that cultural field to now include this idea that the superintendent is an educator as opposed to a figurehead.
What's great, that was at the beginning of the school year. We've already fast forward a month now, and now I have teachers asking me, kindergarten, hey, can you come in and do a read with the kids? Absolutely. I'll be there.
Yeah. Anytime. I once decided that I was going to substitute teach each semester, and I would always do elementary in the first semester because I was an elementary teacher. So that is my bread and butter. And it's great. You get to be with kids all day. It's exhausting. You get an idea of what you're asking of teachers, and you might sit in the teacher lounge for a minute, and really it's wonderful. The second semester I would do middle school Spanish because I was a Spanish major. That is a nightmare. Middle school kids, there's a special place in heaven for kindergarten teachers and anything middle school. I can't say that there was a lot of interest in sixth grade. It was the wheel. So 3 weeks Spanish, 3 weeks French, 3 weeks Chinese. And for seventh and eighth grade, you'd choose what language you were going to pursue if you wanted to pursue a world language. And so there was very little motivation. I love what you're doing in terms of strategically getting into classrooms, reading stories, meeting teachers, and having a nice relationship with your union so that their first impulse is to say, isn't this great? He's in our classrooms, as opposed to, what is he trying to find out? Hey, I'd like to ask you a question I ask of every guest who comes on the podcast. What does the term an imperfect leader mean to you? How does that resonate for you?
Man, if I had to pick a couple words to describe my leadership journey, that would probably be the 3 little words, an imperfect leader, because I got into education late. I went back, got my degree when I was 34. I got a job in John Day, Oregon, teaching 6th grade for 4 years. I knew right off the bat I wanted to be an administrator. I knew that's what I was going to do, but the smart gentleman told me you got to have some teeth in order to be an administrator, and 4 years is probably the minimum to have validity when talking to veteran teachers. So 4 years, I had one leadership class under my name. I put in for Prairie City, where I was at the last 6 years. They gave me the job, and I felt, okay, this guy's got good character questions. I couldn't answer a budget question. I had no idea on the ins and outs of how to run a school, but they knew I was going to learn. So anyways, I spent the last 6 years, and I think we did a really good job turning that district around and putting it in the right place. But I only had 4 years of teaching. But I think it comes down to what you're willing to do, right? You know what you're capable of. And I know what my goals, but am I willing to put in the time and sacrifice? And a lot of people, that first hurdle, unfortunately, I have a lot of friends, first hurdle, and they're like, I can't do this. Getting that good support system, trying to network as much as I could and asking tons of questions. I actually had 5 or 6 superintendents because I didn't want to burn out one or two of them by always calling them and asking them. So I spread the wealth and they guided me, and I had some good leaders. Then I applied for this job at Baker, and I'm very fortunate and blessed for them to give me this job and opportunity. And now it's time to start kicking some butt here. So
What was the job that you did before you went into education?
So I did heating and air conditioning for about 10 years. And
So you are a valuable superintendent that you know about facilities.
yes, lots of facility stuff. I wrote lots of grants at my other school and did lots of improvements there. And
Right.
And,
Indoor air quality, huge issue for schools. And superintendents are often, they had a career where they were only teacher and then principal. And to have this wealth of information and knowledge really sets you apart.
But it's also, I think it's important when I come to this school, which we have some great leaders. There's some leaders here that have been in the game for a lot longer than I have been. I put that right at the beginning. I said, hey, I wasn't an assistant principal. I just become principal/superintendent of this small school. I have a little bit of knowledge about everything, enough to turn in my reports, roadie, and all that stuff. But to put that out there to them, it makes them feel like, hey, I'm going to lean on you. Because I always tell them, like, listen, there's some things I am not the expert on here. A lot of things, actually. When we get together, we collaborate and make team decisions on the direction we're going to go. And it's worked out for me being a collaborative leader that way. So
I want to talk a minute about the Mosaic Project. It is one of our favorite organizations and has over 25 years of experience empowering students to really celebrate differences, communicate assertively, and resolve conflict peacefully at their outdoor school. I happen to have experience being part of the Mosaic Project, and so I can absolutely tell you it's an amazing organization. Their innovative SEL curriculum is now available to our Imperfect Leader audience. And so you can get a 10% discount through their new documentary film-based Mosaic Classroom Project. So just let the people know during your onboarding process to receive that 10% discount is to just mention An Imperfect Leader. Learn more about the Mosaic Project at mosaicproject.org.
When leaders think in systems, they think differently. They see the big picture, making decisions that create coherence and strengthen communication across their teams. They build adaptability, flexibility, and engagement. Every day, school leaders face complex challenges, from student engagement to staff alignment. What if your team could see those challenges as part of a bigger picture? That's what happens when you think in systems. It's how leaders turn complexity into connection and challenges into opportunities for growth. At the Waters Center for Systems Thinking, we help educators and organizations build this capacity, developing the habits and tools that turn vision into action. Think differently, think in systems. Sign up for our webinars, free resources, or a consultation by visiting our website, which you can find in the show notes.
We're back for segment 2 of An Imperfect Leader called Imperfect Leadership in After Action. My guest today is Casey Hallgarth, the superintendent of the Baker School District in Baker City, Oregon. And as always, in this segment, we ask our guests to deconstruct a decision that they made, and then we discuss it. So, Casey, what happened?
So there was a couple of things I was going to talk about. I think I'm going to go a different route, actually. HR is always, especially at a small school like I was, I didn't have an HR department. Luckily, where I'm at now here in Baker, go Bulldogs, we have an HR department, which I am so grateful for, because I think that's one of the big hangups we as administrators just cringe when we have to fire a person or reprimand somebody. Or as a first year superintendent / principal at my small school, I had an employee that wasn't showing up to meetings, was a pretty good teacher, but has been there for a few years. And then it just seemed like one thing happened after another. Miss a meeting, go check on the teacher, and the teacher's sleeping or fell asleep or whatever, showing up late, all that good stuff. My first thing, not knowing very much as a leader, like I leaned on that support system, the answers I got from my networking with my colleagues, what kind of school district do you want to have? Is this what you want in your building? And said, no.
Will it be good for the district? Will it be good for the kids?
Is this how you want to lead? And is this how you want this teacher leading the students? And so long story short, we decided to non-renew this teacher. But what I had a hard time was, I'm a veteran. He was a veteran, super nice person. But it come down to, I didn't know how to do this. So I'm walking step by step with our legal team. And at the end of it, when I look back 6 years later, that was probably the best move for our district in order for us to get any footing to move forward. But the thing that I really struggled with, Peter, was nice guy, had a family, and I didn't. And that's what put me, like, I'm a human being too. And they have, you support their family. That was the difficult I struggled with as a leader, being put in that situation. So.
You're describing an experience that I think everyone who is in school leadership has to deal with at some point in their career, perhaps multiple times. And that is, you have an obligation to the children in your district and their families, and you have an obligation to your colleagues within the district. When an individual is underperforming, you have an obligation to try to provide support. Sometimes the decision to non-renew becomes apparent. That is really hard, particularly because unlike other industries, when you decide to non-renew someone, they're still there for the next 4 to 5 months. In the private industry, they get a 2 week notice and you move on. If that person is good at heart and has support, you start to hear things from the community as well in terms of, no, we have to save this person. What are you doing kind of thing, particularly if you're in leadership. I'm curious if any of that resonates. As you were making these decisions, it sounds like it was the right decision. It's a clunky path to get there. What was overlooked?
I think how the staff didn't understand why, and then other staff did understand. We had a little bit of division towards the end. I think that's what I overlooked, the impact it was going to have on everybody else, and negative and positive, right? Then trying to mend those relationships to get footing to move forward with the district and try to get our school better.
Yeah, you're trying to balance, it sounds like, what you said earlier in terms of your beliefs and your actions have to go hand in hand. And so you can't say on one hand, we need to have the very best teachers for our kids, and that means being engaged with kids, coming to meetings and those types of things, and then permitting the other to persist, because otherwise the whole system looks at you and says, your actions demonstrate what you value. What did you learn about relationships?
I learned that my attitude and my core beliefs, not everybody buys into that. My first year, so I just thought, hey, everybody's buying in. We have these great staff meetings. Everybody's on the same page. And when we non-renewed this teacher, that was apparent that was not the case. One, I had to reflect a little bit and say, okay, hey, get out of your own little bubble here. You need to look outside this and be more aware. The ones that are buying into what I'm selling and the other ones that we're buying is have conversations about that professionally and see if we can mend those relationships. I'm a big relationship guy. That's one thing I appreciate now more than ever, having an HR department at this school, because that's one position I don't think I could do. I learned a lot from this. My heart and soul would not be into that position because that is a hard job.
That is a hard position. I reflect on the superintendency, particularly the rural superintendency, because you have the responsibility of every position, HR, facilities, bus driver, nutrition services, all of it. I stand in awe of the rural superintendent who is able to do it all, set the tax rate, hold the budget hearing, meet with every board member. I was in a large district, and that allowed me to be, on one hand, the chief cheerleader, chief storyteller, chief learner, and flexibility to do certain things because there were incredible professionals doing other jobs. You had to do them all. And so that's amazing to me.
My colleagues asked, how's it going over in Baker? And I'm like, it is a totally different job. It seems like I have a lot less stress as far as getting things completed and on time, but it's a different type of stress here.
You're not the special ed director. You're not the Title I director. All of those moving parts within a very complex system that's highly regulated, both by state and federal statute. You now have a collaborative team that you don't have to be the sole person trying to figure it all out. I imagine those 5 soups that you regularly called maybe get fewer calls, but they also remain to be close contacts for you. And now you have internally some really valuable partners. What frustrated you?
Like I said before, I think the biggest frustration was I thought I had everybody buying in, and part of that I think is just lack of experience. I have a short admin life, but a whole life of experience. Lots of coaching, sports, living life, making bad decisions and learning from those decisions and making good decisions. And I think that has a lot to do with my core values, but probably frustrated with not being able to see the people that weren't buying in sooner, so I could have maybe swayed that a little bit before we made this decision to non-renew.
Right.
I had those conversations before.
So it sounds, because my last question is always, what was something good that came out of this situation? I imagine that as you've now had to make subsequent decisions, similar whether in HR or others, that are going to impact the way people feel about the direction of the district, you avoid the impulse to make quick decisions. That is really important for leaders because so many decisions are being thrown at them. And then I imagine you're asking yourself, what are the unintended consequences of this decision? Or what might somebody else think about this decision? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, especially in a small community, and even Baker, I think we got 10,000, 11,000 people here, I think. And just the small community. And especially now when we were in our 20s, we didn't have Facebook and all these social media platforms to get the information out instantly. We had snail mail and maybe email. I would say just being in a small community, having to deal with the social media aspects of it. Yeah. So I think in the end, it helped me realize that don't make quick decisions. I've learned these last 10 years in education that I need a lot of reflection, use your support groups, and then trust your legal team.
What advice would you give to an aspiring leader?
I'm going to give you my own experience here. You go into it, and I am still gung-ho. I get up every day. I love my job. Even through COVID, I'm like, God, I don't know if I can do this. I'm like, let's get up and tackle the day and conquer it. And I think as a new administrator, my advice would be get a network set up with support. And then usually the networking doesn't come to you. You have to go to the network, right? And so get out there at as many conferences as you can. I remember my first law conference on the West Side here in Oregon. I walk in, it's right before the guest speaker, and there's all these tables, and I'm a team of one, right? Because a small district going to this law conference, and I don't know anybody. And so I'm looking around, and I remember I'm like, man, I hope somebody makes eye contact with me and I'll go sit down at that table. And nobody did. I had to suck it up and get really out of my comfort zone and introduce myself to some very veteran administrators. To this day, I'm still friends with a couple of them. I use them as one of my networks. And so whenever I see at a conference a young administrator, and you can tell when they're new, because I had deer in the headlights look, yep, who am I going to sit by? I always wave them over to our table or wherever I'm sitting, and then we get them going. Don't shy away from the networking, get involved, and have a ton of reflection, even with your network and with your partner. So
I hope today was some good reflection as well.
Oh, sometimes this is awesome, man.
I'm so glad that you got to join us. My guest today was Casey Hallgarth, Superintendent of Baker School District in Baker City, Oregon. I was taking some notes here. What I keep going back to is the importance of relationship, whether that be this network of support. It is about building those relationships with staff, hearing from your union president. You're in schools, they're noticing and they're seeing you, and that resonates. To have those partnerships, taking a couple of days a week where you're in schools and in the community, getting to know the people who are going to be your biggest supporters and want to understand where you're headed as a school district, what's good for kids, what's good for the district. And then with your leadership team, now that you are part of a team, you don't have to be the only one making decisions, that you're likely, that's right, you're likely going through some really interesting protocols of identifying problems, listening, coming to decisions together and communicating them. So I'm really grateful for your time today. What a great conversation. Thank you so much. Now,
new administrators, get out into the schools and relate with the kids from kindergarten through 12. Get out of your comfort zone, get in the classroom. That will get your brand, you as an administrator out, and they will love you even more for it.
Can you tell he was a coach? My God, I almost took a knee as you were going. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you, Peter. Thanks a lot.
Okay, we're back. Jamie, what's on your mind?
So I do want to talk about the back end of his interview and the HR dilemma that he found. There's a bunch of things about this that I think are super interesting about Casey that we didn't get into too much. The dilemma that he named was really about the emotion that goes with letting someone go, right? That's where he found struggle. Yes, it was, you had to first name, like, yeah, it's not okay for him to sleep during class. It's not okay. Like he has to name those things. But to me, that felt somewhat technical. Like he knew that those things weren't okay. What he had problems with was that man has a family. He's a veteran like me, and he's having a hard time. Is it okay to take away his job? I thought, what a great example of complex leadership.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a good
and
answer.
human-centered, right? Because he is leading with compassion and empathy and knows that here's a veteran who has had a negative impact on kids. So it goes back to the beginning of his conversation.
Yes.
Who's going to make the decision what's best for kids? Even though I've checked with legal, I checked with superintendent, and yet, oh my God, like this is really hard. I thought
there wasn't an answer there, right? Is there a clear answer? Yes, you probably do need to let him go, but that's what I think most people don't realize about running big public people-filled systems for people, is that these choices come up that are not, there's no clear one thing. You're weighing both decisions could be valid.
I know. And I can tell you, we have done things like maybe we turn this person into a paraprofessional or a classroom aide because even though the salary is half as much, the benefits are still there. Maybe we try to find some other piece in the system that has no contact with kids. And that still doesn't feel great. It doesn't feel great. I can remember 2 instances. One where I walked into an elementary school classroom and only 3 black boys in the class, first grade. And each of them had their desks facing the wall. And the teacher was just teaching. And I left there and went to HR and was like, needs to go. Nope, we're not doing that. And HR, to their credit, did go in and counsel to retire at Christmas. The next time I remember 4th grade, we looked, and this was the school was 98% free or reduced lunch. And the 4th grade teacher, the kids were making negative growth. Like they made growth 3rd grade to 4th grade. And then, oh my God, they were falling so far behind. And the teacher's response was like, these kids, they don't care. They don't care. And also we were like, do we make them a paraprofessional? No, we said, we're non-renewing you mid-year. And then talk about complex system. Who do you find in the middle of the year to come teach in a classroom, particularly in what is perceived to be a difficult situation? And so that's really tough.
Great example. That I also wondered a little bit, he mentioned it a couple of times about being a vet. And in the future, I would like to talk to, when we get to interview another person, or maybe I go back and interview Casey. And that is, what impact does being a vet, how has that positively helped you in your leadership? Because it felt to me, and this isn't true for every vet, obviously, it's not true for every single one, but there are a couple that I've met recently, and Casey felt like one of them, where clarity of getting to action, and that you don't start with action, that you start with people, you start with listening, and then we're going to action. That's what we're going to go do. And you work at it. You get up every day, you do your job, you do the best you can, and tomorrow you try to be better than you were the day before. That's what Casey felt like to me. That Casey was like, nope, I'm working harder today. I worked hard yesterday. I'll work even a little hard, just a little harder today.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was thinking to myself, it's the sort of the understanding of the human element. So he's got a non-renew, this individual who's a veteran, but yet he himself was a veteran. So there's a camaraderie and support and also a realization of what is right. And so seeking guidance and mentorship and all those types of things, he took at least a pause before taking what might be impulsive. I may have just said, we're not renewing this person, he's bad for kids. Whereas Casey was like, let me just think this through for a minute. And I would say Casey's approach is better than what would be an impulsive one.
those are my main thoughts. I had one other one. He said, because so many of our administrators were in their buildings and doing their own thing, and that this set him up to learn together, and that he wasn't just sending them out to learn something, whether that be leadership development or evaluation or what budget or whatever. And so my question to you was, I want to know more about that. Happens a lot. Principals are often isolated.
And then they choose from a menu of their own interests as opposed to it's like the age-old argument of centralized versus decentralized. Oh, we shouldn't be so centralized because we have unique needs, and to be decentralized allows us to be responsive to the unique needs of my school or my community. And centralized it's like federalism versus states' rights. There are certain things we need to do well all together. So I think what you're doing is you're referring to his work with Studer Education. Good for Casey for thinking, I've had a different career. I bring a certain set of strengths. However, how do I organize a complex system around student learning? And they really do believe that it starts with your school culture and your district culture.
The idea of what does it take when so many of our admin are in their buildings doing their own thing doesn't mean that the thing they're doing is bad for kids. It just means that we're disparate.
Yeah.
And there has to be something
and
unified.
it's disconnected. Yeah.
Yes.
So
what do we unify
becomes,
around?
Yeah. And if you're doing that in a district like mine, where we had almost 40 schools and 30% mobility, then it's unfair to kids because they are moving. 1 in every 3 kids is moving from one school to another during that school year. If you're prioritizing something for your building that isn't necessarily about like the school culture or those type of things, but it's instructional, and that kids are going to miss entire units of study when they move to this next school because you decided to teach things at different times and you had different approaches, and then that's not child-centered. That is adult-focused.
So that's interesting. I totally agree with that. My brain goes to applying it as it relates to district-wide growth. As we open more schools, the community gets bigger or changes, that could foster, we're unique. You guys have this new population. We don't. They're not wrong, because demographically, you might see a difference, or geographically, like this part of the community goes to that school, this part of the community goes to that school, but you're creating division within the district. You're fostering a sense within the community. You're fostering a sense of like those people over there and us over here. And the purpose to me of a community is for it to all be us.
I think now you can see why our motto was, we are one. There may be things that are appropriate in one building, and you know what? They ought to be explored in all buildings, because it is that way that a community understands that it's one. Alrighty, I think we are done for this week. I look forward to seeing you next week. You've been listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendent and Leadership Podcast. Jamie, I'll see you next week.
I will see you next week too, Peter. Goodbye.
Oh my gosh.
So long. Farewell.
Exactly. Man,
I'll
have
be
my
there
first
soon.
champagne. Yes? Oh, you didn't finish it. I didn't even hit stop it. Music for An Imperfect Leader was written and arranged by Ian Varley. Sam Falbo created our artwork, a wood print-inspired Daruma doll butterfly. Remember, imperfect leadership is not a scarlet letter. It's a badge of honor. It recognizes that serving as a lead learner is about being a vulnerable leader, an empathetic leader, a compassionate Music for An Imperfect Leader was written and arranged by Ian Varley. Sam Falbo created our artwork, a wood print inspired Daruma doll butterfly. Remember, imperfect leadership is not a scarlet letter. It's a badge of honor. It recognizes that serving as a lead learner is about being a vulnerable leader, an empathetic leader, a compassionate leader. We are proud to be imperfect leaders, so join us next time for another episode of An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendent and Leadership Podcast.